Hey there. Subscribe to my channel. And also press this bell icon, so you never miss any new updates, cause whenever we upload new video you will get a notification on your phone.
Procedure for personal protective equipment. Purpose, scope. The purpose of this document is to outline responsibilities and provide guidance on the use, storage, maintenance and replacement of personal protective clothing and equipment that need to be used while carrying out KOC activities or in KOC-controlled area. The procedure describes the principal precautions required to be taken by all personnel including contractors and apply to all KOC activities and KOC-controlled area. Definitions. Personal protective equipment, PPE. Personal protective equipment, commonly referred to as PPE, is equipment worn by a person to minimize exposure to potential hazards. Hazard assessment. It is a process of identifying physical and health hazards in the workplace. Hazards may be physical or health-related. Examples of physical hazards include but not limited to moving objects, fluctuating temperatures, high-intensity lighting, rolling or pinching objects, electrical connections and sharp edges. Examples of health hazards include overexposure to harmful dusts, chemicals or radiation. Procedure. PPE General. Any PPE purchased should comply with current, relevant KOC specification, standards and directives concerning the design and manufacture of the PPE with regard to health and safety. Provision of PPE. Employers are required to identify and assess the hazards present in the workplace in order to determine the most appropriate types of PPE required at the worksite. There is in effect a hierarchy of control measures, and PPE should always be regarded as the last resort to protect against hazards. Hazard assessment. A first critical step in developing a comprehensive safety and health program is to identify physical and health hazards in the workplace. This process is known as a hazard assessment. Potential hazards may be physical or health-related, and a comprehensive hazard assessment should identify hazards in both categories. The hazard assessment should begin with a walkthrough survey of the facility to develop a list of potential hazards in the following basic hazard categories, but not limited to: impact, penetration, compression, rollover, chemical, heat, cold, harmful dust, light, optical, radiation, biological, noise. In addition to noting the basic layout of the facility and reviewing any history of occupational illnesses or injuries and previous incidents, things to look for during the walkthrough survey include, but not limited to: sources of electricity, sources of motion such as machines or processes where movement may exist that could result in an impact between personnel and equipment, sources of high temperatures that could result in burns, eye injuries or fire, types of chemicals used in the workplace, sources of harmful dusts, sources of optical radiation, such as welding, brazing, cutting, furnaces, heat treating, high-intensity lights, etc. The potential for falling or dropping objects, sharp objects that could poke, cut, stab or puncture, biologic hazards such as blood or other potentially infected material, limitations of movement during work, lack of oxygen during work. When the walkthrough is complete, the assessor should organize and analyze the data so that it may be efficiently used in determining the proper types of PPE required at the worksite. It is definitely a good practice to select PPE that will provide a level of protection greater than the minimum required to protect employees from hazards. The workplace should be periodically reassessed, at least once in 2 years, for any changes in conditions, equipment or operating procedures that could affect occupational hazards. This periodic reassessment should also include a review of injury and illness records including previous incidents to spot any trends or areas of concern and taking appropriate corrective action. The suitability of existing PPE, including an evaluation of its condition and age, should be included in the reassessment. Documentation of the hazard assessment is required through a written certification that includes the following information: identification of the workplace evaluated, name of the persons conducting the assessment, type of hazards, date of previous assessment, date of the assessment, and identification of the document certifying completion of the hazard assessment. Selection of PPE. When selecting the PPE, it should be ensured that the items used together adequately control the assessed hazards against which they are provided. PPE should be of the correct size and not too large or too small for the user. All PPE should be checked, inspected, tested before it should be worn, used, and should be free of any type of defect, damage, even minor damage. While selecting the PPE for chemicals, relevant MSDS must be referred. PPE selection should favor recyclable and eco-friendly equipment. PPE must be always of good quality, and no attempt should be made to make questionable savings by purchasing items of unknown quality. Purchases should be made only from reputed suppliers, manufacturers whose products meet the KOC and other applicable requirements. All PPE clothing and equipment should be of safe design and construction, and should be maintained in a clean and reliable condition. Employers should take the fit and comfort of PPE into consideration when selecting appropriate items for their workplace, and also the hot climatic conditions prevailing in Kuwait. PPE that fits well and is comfortable to wear will encourage employee to use PPE. Most protective devices are available in multiple sizes, and care should be taken to select the proper size for each employee. If several different types of PPE are worn together, make sure they are compatible. If PPE does not fit properly, it can make the difference between being safely covered or dangerously exposed. It may not provide the level of protection desired and may discourage employee to use. Controlling teams should ensure that contractor-provided PPE used in the workplace conforms to the KOC criteria, based on the hazard assessment, KOC specifications and international standards. Maintenance, storage and replacement of PPE. An effective system of maintenance of PPE must be established to ensure the equipment continues to provide the degree of protection for which it was designed. This includes the provision of suitable storage facilities for PPE so that it can be safely stored or kept when not in use. All PPE must be kept clean and in good condition for use. Maintenance and storage of the PPE shall be as per the respective PPE manufacturer recommendations and the relevant standards. When PPE has reached the end of its useful life or damaged, it should be disposed responsibly. It must then be replaced as per manufacturer's instructions and KOC waste management policy, procedures. Information, instruction, and training. All personnel involved in the use and maintenance of PPE should be given suitable information, instruction and training to enable them to make effective use of the PPE provided to protect them against workplace hazards. PPE should be used in accordance with the employer's instructions, which should in turn be based on the manufacturer's instructions for use. Moreover, PPE should be used only after adequate training has been given to the user. Employees are supposed to know at least the following about PPE. When PPE is necessary. What PPE is necessary. How properly to put on, take off, adjust and wear the PPE. The limitations of the PPE. Proper care, maintenance, useful life and disposal of PPE. Supervisors should make sure that each employee demonstrates understanding of the PPE training as well as the ability to properly wear and use PPE before they are allowed to perform work requiring the use of the PPE. If the supervisor believes that a previously trained employee is not demonstrating the proper understanding and skill level in the use of PPE, that employee should receive retraining. Other situations that require additional or retraining of employees include the circumstances such as changes in the workplace or in the type of required PPE that make prior training obsolete. PPE awareness. Training shall be provided in consideration to SEM's procedure on HSE training, awareness and continued HSE learning process. Doc-KOCGE.028. Types of PPE. Eye and face protection. Employees can be exposed to a large number of hazards that pose danger to their eyes and face. Employees must have appropriate eye or face protection if they are exposed to eye or face hazards from flying particles, molten metal, liquid chemicals, acids or caustic liquids, chemical gases or vapors, potentially infected material or potentially harmful light radiation. Many occupational eye injuries occur because workers are not wearing any eye protection, while others result from wearing improper or poorly fitting eye protection. Employees must wear appropriate eye and face protection, and that the selected form of protection is appropriate to the work being performed and properly fits each worker exposed to the hazard. Examples of potential eye or face injuries include, but not limited to, dust, dirt, metal or wood chips entering the eye from activities such as chipping, grinding, sawing, hammering, the use of power tools or even strong wind forces. Chemical splashes from corrosive substances, hot liquids, solvents or other hazardous solutions. Objects swinging into the eye or face, such as tree limbs, chains, tools or ropes. Radiant energy from welding, harmful rays from the use of lasers or other radiant light, as well as heat, glare, sparks, splash and flying particles. All employees whose job requires the use of industrial eye protection must be trained in the proper use of the eye wash facilities provided at the site. Refer Appendix 4 for detailed specification of safety glasses. Prescription lenses. Everyday use of prescription corrective lenses will not provide adequate protection against most occupational eye and face hazards. So employees with corrective lenses must either wear eye protection that incorporates the prescription into the design or wear additional eye protection over their prescription lenses. It is important to ensure that the protective eyewear does not disturb the proper positioning of the prescription lenses so that the employee's vision will not be inhibited or limited. Also, employees who wear contact lenses must wear eye or face PPE when working in hazardous conditions. Based upon analysis of the potential eye hazards in the workplace and local experience, sites may restrict the wearing of contact lenses in certain locations, which must be appropriately identified. Head protection. Protecting employees from potential head injuries is a key element of any safety program. A head injury can impair an employee for life or it can be fatal. Wearing a safety helmet is one of the easiest ways to protect an employee's head from injury. Safety helmets can protect employees from impact and penetration hazards as well as from electrical shock and burn hazards. Employees must wear head protection if any of the following apply. Objects might fall from above and strike them on the head. They might bump their heads against fixed objects, such as exposed pipes or beams, or during slip, trip and fall. There is a possibility of accidental head contact with electrical hazards. To obtain proper protection, helmets must be worn squarely on the head, not tilted to one side or toward the rear. The entire helmet should be replaced when the shell shows signs of damage, wear, or has been subjected to an impact that would lessen the integrity of the helmet. Under normal conditions of storage and use, helmet shall be replaced after 5 years from date of manufacture. 5-year expiry period shall be calculated from month and year of manufacture embossed on inside of the shell of that helmet. Industrial protective helmets should not be stored or carried on the rear window shelf of an automobile, since in the case of emergency stops or accidents, the helmet might become a hazardous missile. Any modification or addition to the helmet must not be carried out. No foreign objects such as booklets or other personal articles must be kept between the suspension and the shell. New employees shall be provided with green color helmet during her probation period, and similarly visitors shall be provided with green color helmet aiming distinct identity as per the Green Hat program. Refer Appendix -1 for detailed specification of safety helmet. Foot protection. Employee who may face possible foot injuries due to falling, rolling objects or from crushing penetrating materials must wear protective footwear. Examples of situations in which an employee should wear foot protection include, but not limited to, when heavy objects such as barrels or tools might roll onto or fall on the employee's feet. Working with sharp objects such as nails or spikes that could pierce the soles or uppers of ordinary shoes. Working on or around hot, wet or slippery surfaces. Refer Appendix 2 for detailed specification of safety footwear. Hand and arm protection. If a workplace hazard assessment reveals that employees face potential injury to hands and arms that cannot be eliminated through engineering and work practice controls, employees must wear appropriate protection. Potential hazards include skin absorption of harmful substances, chemical or thermal burns, electrical dangers, bruises, abrasions, cuts, punctures, fractures and amputations. Protective equipment includes gloves, finger guards and arm coverings or elbow-length gloves. Employers should explore all possible engineering and work practice controls to eliminate hazards and use of PPE to provide additional protection against hazards that cannot be completely eliminated through other means. For example, machine guards may eliminate a hazard. Installing a barrier to prevent workers from placing their hands at the point of contact between a table saw blade and the item being cut is another method. Types of protective gloves. There are many types of gloves available today to protect against a wide variety of hazards. The nature of the hazard and the operation involved will affect the selection of gloves. The variety of potential occupational hand injuries makes selecting the right pair of gloves challenging. It is essential that employees use gloves specifically designed for the hazards and tasks found in their workplace because gloves designed for one function may not protect against a different function even though they may appear to be an appropriate protective device. The following are examples of some factors that may influence the selection of protective gloves for a workplace, but not limited to. Type of chemicals handled. Nature of contact, total immersion, splash, etc. Duration of contact. Area requiring protection, hand only, forearm, arm. Grip requirements, dry, wet, oily. Thermal protection. Size and comfort. Abrasion, resistance requirements. Body protection. Employees who face possible bodily injury of any kind that cannot be eliminated through engineering, work practice or administrative controls, must wear appropriate body protection while performing their jobs. In addition to cuts and radiation, the following are examples of workplace hazards that could cause bodily injury, but not limited to. Temperature extremes. Hot splashes from molten metals and other hot liquids. Potential impacts from tools, machinery and materials. Hazardous chemicals. There are many varieties of protective clothing available for specific hazards. Employers are required to ensure that their employees wear personal protective equipment only for the parts of the body exposed to possible injury. Examples of body protection include, but not limited to laboratory coats, coveralls, vests, jackets, aprons, surgical gowns and full-body suits. If a hazard assessment indicates a need for full-body protection against toxic substances or harmful physical agents, the clothing should be carefully inspected before each use. It must fit each worker properly and it must function properly for the purpose it is intended. If a hazard assessment indicates a need for disposable coveralls, chemical protective clothing, it shall be used for the relevant activities, for example, sludge removal from process vessels, painting and coating works inside vessels. Coveralls, inherently flame-resistant and 100% cotton. All persons in areas or operations where the workplace evaluation indicates risk of flash fire must wear inherently flame-resistant coverall. It is applicable for employees as well as contractors including the visitors who pass through such areas. Single-piece IFR coveralls can be used as boiler suits. Combustible contaminants reduce the thermal performance of any flame-resistant garment. Regardless of the fiber type, these contaminants become a fuel source that can ignite in a flash fire and increase burn injury. Combustible contaminants such as polishes, paint, grease, oily soil, etc., must be removed by cleaning the garment. Coveralls saturated with oils, greases, or other flammable substances must be replaced. Where potential for a flash fire exists, a safety shower, hose, or other means must be immediately available to extinguish any afterflame on the protective apparel. Inherently flame-resistant coverall that has mechanical damage, for example rips, tears, must be replaced promptly. Special protective clothing shall be worn where working conditions make it necessary, for example chemical suites, reflecting jackets, waterproof suits, gloves and masks as appropriate when handling hazardous or toxic materials. If exposed to radiography or X-ray appropriate clothing, equipment should be worn, used. Refer appendix of this procedure for 100% cotton and IFR coverall specifications, Appendix 3A, 3B, 3C and 3D. Hearing protection. Employee exposure to excessive noise depends upon a number of factors, including but not limited to the loudness of the noise as measured in decibels, decibel. The duration of each employee's exposure to the noise. Frequency spectrum, hertz. Whether employees move between work areas with different noise levels. Whether noise is generated from one or multiple sources. If engineering and work practice controls do not lower employee exposure to workplace noise to acceptable levels, employees must wear appropriate hearing protection. It is important to understand that hearing protectors reduce only the amount of noise that gets through to the ears. The amount of this reduction is referred to as attenuation, which differs according to the type of hearing protection used and how well it fits. Hearing protectors worn by employees must reduce an employee's noise exposure to within the acceptable limits. The selection of the hearing protection is basically given by the loudness, frequency spectrum and the exposure level. Based on this, the final decision must be taken on the NRR, noise reduction rating, of the protection chosen. All hearing protection devices must have a noise reduction rating, NRR, printed on the package as per KOC standard KOC L010. The NRR for the device shall be reviewed to determine if the hearing protection device's HPD is adequate to reduce the noise reaching the wearer ear to less than 85 dB. Mandatory PPE. All personnel working in operational site areas must at all time wear mandatory protective clothing and equipment and ensure that it is fit for its purpose. Mandatory PPE includes safety helmets, footwear, coverall and eye protection. Other PPE shall be used as per hazard assessment. PPE audit and inspection. PPE audit and inspection shall be conducted as per KOC audit, inspection and self-assessment procedure, KOC GE.016. Abbreviations. KOC-Kuwait Oil Company. HSE-Health, Safety, and Environment. SIMS, HSE Management System. PPE, Personal Protective Equipment. IFR- Inherently Flame Resistant. OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. EPA- Environment Public Authority. NRR, Noise Reduction Rating. MSDS, Material Safety Data Sheet. KPC, Kuwait Petroleum Corporation.
Hey there. Subscribe to my channel. And also press this bell icon, so you never miss any new updates, cause whenever we upload new video you will get a notification on your phone.